And then a Black Gemara. Today's daf is daf Lamed Gimel. Today's daf is daf Lamed Gimel with Aleph, and we have been learning about the importance of Pnei Seva, Takum V'Darta Pnei Zaken. Who exactly is the Pnei Zaken? Who we're referring to here? We're talking about somebody even young who's intelligent, or even somebody old. Number one, and as well, we had a discussion whether anybody who's old, even a Zaken Hashmaya, according to Rashi, means a Russia, according to Teitzim, means Namoritz, or specifically someone who is not an Amoritz. And you'll learn also what it might even include Goyim, as we shall see. Says the Gemara, we are up to Lam Gimel and Aleph, about 5 lines into the wide lines. Amamar, we taught Yochel Yamud Meponav Mebeis Hakise Umebeis Hamerchetz. It says in the Brisa, we're going through the entire Brisa we learned yesterday. It says in the Brisa, we would have thought that if your rabbi walks in or a chashva person walks in, you should stand up even in the bathroom, even in the bathhouse. The Gemara says, and we should conclude, no, you don't have to, because it's not a respectful place. Hadarta has to be a place of hidur. Says you don't stand up. But Abchia was one sitting in the bathhouse. The Rebbe's son of Shimon happened to walk by. Abchia didn't stand up. The Ikbid and Rebbe's son, Rabbi Shimon, was offended. But also, he went and told his father, I taught him 2/5 of Sevet Tehillim. It's literally 150 prokim in Tehillim. So 2/5 of that would be 60 prokim. Tracy says, no, the Tehillim already has been separated into 5 days. And he means 2 days of that. Would it seem that Rashi didn't have the breakup of Tehillim into days? Because we know who broke up the Tehillim into days. Why would Rashi say Shnei Chomshim means 2/5 rather than 2 days? But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi said 2/5 literally, which means Rashi didn't have 5 for him. Or what happened? How does it mean? I don't know. Or if he did, why Taka doesn't even learn that way? Don't know. And he didn't stand up for me. I taught him. I'm not Stamach Chacham. I taught him. What's going on here? Besu, another story of Shimon Rebbe. Obviously, he was very concerned about his covenant. Besu Bar Kapora, the Amrla, others say of Shmuel, but Rabbi Yasi. Have Yosef was sitting in the bathhouse. Oh, well, Shimon Rebbe will accompany him to stand up. The Ikbid was makbid. Again, he was upset. But also, he went and told his father, you know what happened? Shnei Shalishi Shalish. 2/3 of a third. I told him to tell his Kainim, which is the Mishnayos. I'm not really clear. I told him 2/3 of 1/3. He just stand up. And in Pigov it says if you teach you, one halacha, you already have to stand up. And here he didn't stand up for me. But Amalei Rebbe to vend them said Shema behen Yoshev Mahar. Maybe they were thinking about the very Torah you taught them. You wanted to appease his son, even though Torah says you could just have said maybe there was so involved in the Torah, whatever Torah they were thinking about, and they got almost like time. The Behen Yeshiva Mahara. So before we get to that question you just asked, how can you think Torah in the bathhouse? The only excuse that they had was that they were involved in Torah. They wouldn't talk about involved in Torah. The rabbi walks in, they should have stood up in a bathhouse. So how can the Bride say you don't? The bathhouse, you have the inner chambers where everybody's naked. You have the outer ones where everybody's dressed. In the inner ones, you don't stand up. Here, the story of Shimon Rebbe was in the outer ones. And I'll prove it to you. Because what did he say? What was the defense? They was thinking of Torah. Everywhere you're permitted to think Torah. The Beis HaMerchet, the Beis HaKisei. What you doing thinking Torah, the Beis HaMerchet? Obviously, it's the outer room. Well, that's not a proof. But they can't help it. Wherever they are, even in the bathhouse, even in the inner room, they just can't help it. Their brains constantly thinking Torah. Big Machlek is a poskim. So what about the middle room? Remember, we learned in Rosh Hashanah, other places there are 3 rooms. There's the inner room where everyone is naked, the outer room where everybody's dressed, and the inner room where people are getting dressed and getting naked and getting dressed and changing. And there you have some and some. So what's the din over there? Because you're saying that the inner room is no covet. So that means the middle room you're allowed to. You have to give covet. You say the outer room you have to give covet, the middle room you don't have to. So that remains a discussion. Says the Gemara. I would have thought the Brisa said I would have thought I can close my eyes as if I didn't see him. The Torah says you have to stand, say Takum, and this guy's closing his eyes. So who are we talking to? Who are we addressing here? Ella no. Yochel yatzim ein of mekame delimtis man chiyuva. We learned before already that there's a way to circumnavigate certain mitzvahs. Like you bring the new tool in through your skylight, or you bring it in its husk, so you avoid the mitzvah. Here also, if they, before, remember we said before, when you see them, you have to stand up. So they close their eyes before they see them. They know they're coming at 9 o'clock, so they close their eyes prior to their arrival. I would have thought you're allowed to do that. The chimot is man chiyuva lechazele. When the time comes, the taka didn't see him. The kohen mekameh, they should stand up before him. You should know that the David should know what you're doing over here, and even so, you should not try to avoid this chiyuv of standing up. What's the type? How long do you have to be standing to say this is covered? I would say that when this person is within your 4 amas, that's when you have to stand up. That's when it's obvious why he's standing up. He's standing up for his covenant. Only if your teacher, that's not your Rabbi Muvik. But if it's your teacher, it's your Rabbi Muvik. As soon as you can see him, you already have to stand up. Before I forgot to tell you, it's interesting. Taisa says over here that maybe he was thinking about what you taught him. The Tehillim that you taught him. Maybe he was thinking about that. So Taisa says, why does he say that? Maybe it's about any Tehillim. Because by Tehillim it says Soid Hashem l'Reyev, and Abchia said that you shouldn't. All the bad things should happen to me if I'm not constantly looking and saying Tehillim. So Taisa here is a mocker that a person should always be saying Tehillim. Should always be saying Tehillim. Abaya when he saw the ear of the donkey of Rabbi Yosef, as he was coming, have a karim Abaya, he would stand up. He would stand up because we're going to have a whole discussion. If you're sitting on a donkey, rochav kimahalach dami, is it like he's walking or is it like he's sitting? And we'll have this in Bamitzia in the first page. We're going to have a whole discussion regarding kinyonim, rochav and manig. But here also, because if your Rebbe is sitting, you have to stand up for it. It's only if your Rebbe is standing. So how do we treat this? Because the animal is what's moving, but Rabbi Yosef is sitting one place. So do we treat him like sitting or standing? And Abaya definitely here followed the practice that it's as if he's walking, he's standing, and therefore he stood up for him. Abaya he was riding a donkey on one side of the river. Yosef and his students were sitting by the gisa. Didn't stand up. I taught you that a Rabbi Muvik, as soon as you can see him, you should stand up. How come you're not standing? We didn't notice. We were so concentrating on chazing Yeshurim, we didn't notice. Shmuel says, how do you know a Zaken shouldn't go through, wait till everybody's sitting and then go right through, make sure everybody stand up? Even the Zaken also has to fear Hashem. If he goes around, he he'll live a long life. A little bit hard to understand. We just brought a pasuk that says Zaken v'Yoresa. What's the big chiddush that Abaye follow what the pasuk says, or that Reb Zayda follow what the pasuk said? So obviously, he's talking about they went beyond the letter of the law. They went, he lived 60 years. Rabba lived 40. He was a Bnei Eli, yeah. But Abaye lived 60. 60 in those days is probably not bad. Ravina, remember Rabbi Yosef made a big party when he hit 60 because he just went beyond the chorus years. But if a person went by, he didn't cover his head. What a chutzpah this person has. Because it doesn't cover his head. Actually, in Tosefta it says there, where is it again? I can't remember. It says over there that Rabbi Kiva didn't cover his head. So Rabbi Kiva said, Shma mina mamzerhu, and turned out to be he was a mamzer. To have such a brazen chutzpah to walk with the head uncovered. And over here, again, every time there's a head uncovered in the Gemara, there's a discussion. We're talking about a hat, and we're talking about a yamas. Or a hat. The Bes Yosef Simcha says it means a hat. Yeah, but Yetzi Yaakov, somebody took him. No, before that, but Yetzi Yaakov. Oh, Machlekes came out and you from the Yaakov. Okay. Maybe it comes from this city over there. Look at it in a good way. Maybe because there's so many chachamim that they don't really feel. When you see a Talmid Chacham once in a while, you give all this nechedes and cover. But if you live amongst them, you're circling amongst them, it loses its value. So it's not a negative thing. Not because the Chas V'Sholom anyway, he doesn't hold you in esteem. Each of you mipnei seva takum. I feel the kol seva mashma. It says mipnei seva takum. Each of you says any seva. Even if he's not Ashma, even somebody who is a Rashi, a Rasha Tesis and Amoritz. Yeah. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, halacha ki say, but Yehuda, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. You stand up for anybody. Rabbi Yechanan have a comment. Can be somebody more. Rabbi Yechanan would stand up for a guy. Why? So some people hold it from this pasuk as well. Some achrayim was going to pasuk. Other people don't know from this pasuk. But Rabbi Yechanan gave a reason. Amakama hafnike odu alayu. How many experiences did this person have? Experience is what did Benjamin Franklin have? Experience is a costly school, but a fool will learn no other. That they could teach you life experiences, and therefore you can always learn something from somebody, and therefore you have to also give them their credits. In fact, according to those poskim who say that it's included in the pasuk, if they say v'takum, what do you have to give a reason for the experiences? Sidon is trying to explain why the pasuk says you should stand up for that. Honey, yeah, by the honey, Rava make him lekoy. Rava wouldn't go as far as standing up, but he'd give a little hiddur, a nod, an acknowledgement. Abaye, you have yodel l'sol. Abaye would give his hand, extend his hand to help them. Rava Mishader Shlucha. Rava would never go himself, he would send somebody. Rava was not so into the interaction there. Nachman Mishader Guzoi. Nachman he was the Av Bezdin, and he was the son-in-law of the Nasi, so he always had his police, working like security guards, and he would send these security guards to go help the guy, to help them. Nachman used to say, "Oh, my, you love Torah. Come and Nachman Rabbi Kibbutz." So now we know his father there was Abba. Nachman would say, "What's so special about me? It's not me. It's my Torah. So I don't have a right to be meichel." In fact, we just had a whole discussion before that a Rav, if a Rav can be meichel in the covered or not, and we concluded that Rav could because the Torah doesn't become his. But Nachman says that no. So what's pshat? Either he taka argues and he says that Rav cannot be meichel is covered, or he's saying as far as a goy is concerned, because they don't have the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, so therefore for them I cannot be meichel the covered of Torah. You're not supposed to stand up for your Rebbe twice a day. Why? You shouldn't give more cover to a boss of a dump, to a human being, than to the Eibush himself. That means that if you're there all day, you only stand up twice a day. The Neidim Yehuda, if I remember correctly, has a famous tshuva there, where he talks about that the mitzvah of being of Kabbalah Rabbi, Chayiv Adam LeKabbalah Pnei Rabbi Beregel, Rabbi Yitzchak is actually Shana and Sukkah. It's a mitzvah to visit Rebbe on Yom Tov does not apply today. Why? Since we no longer have a mitzvah to visit the Eibishter, how can it be that we have a mitzvah to visit a boss of Adam and not visit the Eibishter? Where did he get that started from? Right here. That you cannot show more cover to a boss of Adam than to the Eibishter. That's what Yehuda says. Everyone argues with him because they bring Raish from the Gemara talking about after Churban Beis Hamikdash and so on and so forth. But Tosfos has another pshat that Hashay doesn't mean not allowed to. It means you don't have to. You don't have to stand up more than twice a day. Which then, if that's the case, then the whole vort of the Yehuda falls apart because it doesn't say you're not supposed to. So you don't have to. Sidon Yehuda will say when he said B'chai Vadon Hakvar Yaberegel, it didn't mean you're not allowed to visit Rebbe. There's no mitzvah anymore to visit you there. You learn that way. But Magen Avraham clearly says in Hilchos Yom Kippur, that there's a mitzvah today of being kabel from Rebbe Beregel. Talking about going into the water to go visit your Rebbe on Yom Kippur. Oh, it's true. So anyway, right to Mesa Ved, that's a question of that. You know, do more twice a day. I know Zaka should be Machiria. Zaka should be right. You shouldn't go right between the Amit Shachir Rabba. It's only twice a day, then what's a big ticha? All you have to do is twice a day, so it's not a big ticha. It's one thing is 100 times, every time he walks in and out, you have to stand up, it's a ticha. But twice a day, once in a night, what's the big deal? Isn't that a raya for ket? Nevertheless, even that is too much of a ticha. Remember my brother, when he davened on his own, he would daven forever. If he davened a minyan, he used to finish Manesah before anybody else did. So they shouldn't have to wait for it. The Tichin is a Buddha. Amar Abazakam, ain't time a stand before his Rebbe is called a Rosh. And you won't live a long life. Apart from the fact that it says in the Pasuk, they say with talk and so on, you'll be punished. The Talmud Mishtakech, since you don't appreciate the value of Torah, you will forget your learning. Remember, it says in the Pasuk, "V'toiv lo yil Rasha," that good will not be to a Rasha. He will not have long days. Like a shadow, disappears. Why? He doesn't fear Hashem. So the Gemara, what do you mean does fear Hashem? What way does it manifest itself? It says by Mipnei Sefer Tokum, you should fear Hashem. How do you You know what he did was he didn't stand up for his letters. So the Gemara, is the ribus or moida mishkalos? There are other mitzvahs where it says moida. For example, you shouldn't give ribus, or you shouldn't have false weights. Face in the Rishonim asked, where does it say by false weights the word moida? And the Mefarshim tried to find some tips. So some people want to actually change the gears in the Gemara. Instead of Mishkalos, it's Michshalos, with an Elos, it's Michshal. And others want to say there's a pasuk next to it which says Moida. Abelazar, Pnei Gomer, answering Gemara, Abelazar, he got. Sorry, where? Yeah, it doesn't say anywhere with Yoresa. Yeah, but it doesn't say anywhere with Yoresa. Yeah, but we're saying here is why, and what's that Veda you did? Yoresa.
Yoresa is always something double the size.
Yeah, no, exactly. I know the Eibush knows. And Rashi said the King Gab Mishkolos Eben Shleim with Tzedek. And what? So maybe you're right. Maybe Rashi is talking about the Arichas Yamin. So he answered Gzei Shabbat, said Nipnei Seva Tokum, and over this Pnei Plei. Iboilu B'noi B'hu Rabbi. What happens? Your son is your teacher. So we're gonna have two questions here. One is whether the father has to stand up for the son, and one is whether the son should stand up for his father. So what happens? Your son is your teacher. Does the son stand up for his father? The father, can he stand up for his father? He's beginning the covenant of you clever one. His father was a Becheskel we had yesterday. Father, even though his father was not a big Talmid Chacham, he said, stand up for your father. So we see clearly, even though he was the Rebbe of his father, but we learned that he corrected his father. He was the Rebbe of his father, and yet Shmuel told him, stand up for your father. That's not right. Rabbi Cheskel might not have been a Talmid Chacham, but he did a lot of good deeds. And therefore, for that alone, is worthy of standing. Even Shmuel would stand up. Based on this, is a big machlek in the poskim. A person does mitzvahs if you have to stand up for them or not, even though they're not Talmid Chacham, but they're a Frumi Yid or something, where you Bal Maisim. Doesn't only mean tzedakah. Just Bal Maisim, maybe you should stand up for them. So the Gemara, Ella, my Karmeleh. So what have you to say to him then? What do you mean when he said stand up? If it's a Bal Maisim, it's to stand up, and it's his father. I'm sitting and you're standing up there. Looks like you're noticing other people. It's your father, stand up for it. Yeah. So what you're saying this. Rabbi Yehuda was not trying to tell him that you have to stand up for your father, even though he's teaching. He's trying to tell him in your case you should stand up because about Maisim. Everyone knows about Maisim, you have to stand up. But you should know that even though I don't notice your father, because he's behind me, stand up anyway. I won't be slighted at all. What about your son as your teacher? Should the father stand up for him? Okay, you tell me that no. So we didn't resolve the question about the son. What about the father? Should he stand up or not? I'm not going to stand up for my son. You know why? Because I'm his teacher. I'll stand up for him because he married into the Nasi's family. In other words, because I'm his teacher. If I wouldn't be his teacher, he'd be my teacher, I would stand up. I'm his teacher. If he would be my teacher, I would stand up. So you see that a father should stand up for his son, a teacher. Wants to know that I either. I should never stand up for his son, regardless of whether I'm his teacher or not. A father does not stand up for his son. That's a little boy. I'm his father. I'm going to stand up, not for him, but for the office. So we didn't resolve either question. The Rosh brings a fascinating thing. The Rosh is the Rebbe of Maram Rutenberg. The Maram Rutenberg was his father's teacher. So it says that after Maram became his father's teacher, or became not so much his father's teacher, but after became Maram Rutenberg, the Rav, and the Nasi, I guess in a way, because he had all these Talmidim, he stopped visiting his father. Because he didn't know the halacha is. He didn't know because we don't know what the halacha is. Should he be standing up for his father? Should his father be standing up for him? So to avoid any shaila, he never saw his father again. The Rosh's Rebbe was Maram Rutenberg. Maram Rutenberg to his father. So Maram Rutenberg's father. And so he never went to visit him since. It's pretty sad. That in itself is head.
He had a sad head.
Something else. Yeah. 22 years. 22 years. But that in itself is Hedr HaKavod. Not visiting your father. What could happen to Yaakov? And interesting, the whole problem of Yaakov and Yosef, because they didn't see him for 22 years. Interesting connection there. Think about it. Actually, just fit me. Yes, connection. Anyway, like riding on a donkey, he's like considered as if your teacher is standing, is sitting because he's sitting, or if you look at the animal, it's moving, so it's moving. And if he has to stand up, oh, what about coming here? It says, but if a tameh has to be sitting in order to spread the tumah in the house. Tameh yoshev tachil, tameh is sitting underneath a tree. The toy, I mean, the toy person standing there, then tameh becomes tameh because the tameh person is sitting. What about tameh oimed, the tameh person standing tachzil, and the toy yoshev, the toy is sitting? Then yoshev toy, he still remains toy. Because why? The tongue person is standing. Or the Yoshev Tummy had Toy tummy, but if the tummy person sat down while the Toy person sat down, then they both become then it becomes tummy. If this tummy person is holding onto a stone, if he's sitting and he spreads tummy, if he's standing, he doesn't spread tummy. What are you teaching me here? The stone is always in one place. The stone is always sitting. But tells us here we don't look at the stone, we look at the person holding the stone. If the person holding the stone is standing, doesn't generate tumah. If he's sitting, it's generating tumah. Either stone is always sitting in the palm of his hand. So it's the same question before. You asked about if you're sitting on a donkey. Do we look at the person who's on the donkey sitting in one place, so therefore you don't have to stand up for him? Or do we say, no, we look at the donkey. The donkey is moving, so therefore it's as if the person is moving. So we see from here, that's what the case. Interesting name, Nachum Bar Kohen. Shema Mina is a good raya. And that's why Abai in the story we learned before, as soon as he saw the ear of the donkey of Rabbi Yosef, he stood up. Because Rabbi Yosef, even though he was sitting, was riding on the donkey and he was moving. So if you have to stand up for your Rebbe when he's walking.
So we're saying it's what the person is doing.
We're looking at the holistic picture, or just focusing on the particular here. So the rock itself is stationed. The rock is tummy. The rock is tummy. The person, let's say, is not tummy for somehow or another. He's holding in a way that is not tummy. Let's say, because otherwise, what's relevance? Or no, even the person's tummy, because he's standing, he doesn't generate tumah. It's only if you're sitting. Only the tummy person is sitting. He's not sitting. The rock is sitting on his hand. So how do we view this rock? As if the rock is sitting, or as if the rock is standing? So if you look at the person holding the rock and standing, if you look at the rock itself, the rock is sitting. And yet you say it does not generate tumah because it's standing. Clear that you look at the whole picture. So if you have a person, a rav sitting on top of an animal, you look at the whole picture, the animal is moving, then you stand up. If you look at the person, he's sitting, you don't stand up. Anyway, right, you have a question. Should you stand up before a Sefer Torah? That Chilki with Absimim with Abelazar Ambe Kabachim. They pray, you stand up before Tamachachim, they say, we're talking until now, the Panela, Koshkin, Shul, and what's the mile of these people? Because they learn Torah. So so that's only like a means to an end. What's the end? Torah itself. Sure, they have to stand up. So as the Rishonim point out, this is exactly the opposite of the Gemara we learned in Gemara Makkah of Chabez, that Hani Bavloi Tipshoy, these Bavloim who are foolish, they stand up before the Torah and they don't stand up for people Lemdah. And Lemdah are great because they can change the Torah around. It says the Torah they should get 40 Malchus, Kemish Rabbaim Yakenu, and they made it to 39. So they're stronger than the Torah. And it's exactly the opposite of what our Gemara says here. Out here, Agmar says for the people, surely for the Torah. And there it says they stand up for the Torah, not for Lemdah, as if Lemdah is greater. So the Rishonim here try to reconcile the two. Rabbi Yossi was sitting, he was walking by them. The Kameh stood up for him. He said to them, first of all, you guys are wiser than me. Why are you standing up for me? As if to say, he holds like the opinion that says that Zokin has to be like a chach, not like Isa ben Yehuda says any Zokin. And even, or he wasn't a Zokin, but he's standing for me because I'm a chacham. You guys are big chacham. He held that you only stand up for a Sefer Torah and not for the scholars. He is like a Sefer Torah. B'shas you're learning, you're the Sefer Torah. And a Sefer Torah is more chashuv than Lemdah. So how can you stop learning to stand up for Lemdah? Which is like the Gemara here that says, how do you know you stand up for Torah? Because matter of the Lemdah, surely the Torah. No, the Torah is more important. When you're learning Torah, you become the Torah. And if you become the Torah, fascinating word, you become the Torah, how can you then stop? And then the Gemara argues, lie to by curse such a person who follows that way, because he says, learn what the Gemara Makkah says, which is that the Lemdah is even greater than the Torah. That you greater than the Torah. Yeah. It's a fascinating Rashi. Rashi says in the first wide line, Torah Oimedus Lifnei Lamdeh, Bitmia, Lefisha Asukim Bidvar Halacha, because they were learning Halacha, Hayakari Luladudu Torah Atzma. If you're learning Torah and B'Shas Maisa, you are the Torah. Or the Didei, and he himself, he wasn't learning, he was walking. Kari Lamdeh, I'm a Leimed Torah, I'm a Talmid Chacham. So this idea that while you're learning Torah, you become the Torah itself is a fascinating thought. And Abaye occurs because whoever follows this shitta, because he held like the Gemara Makis that says that Lamdeh are greater than the Torah itself. Anyway, back to the Gemara. They were looking after Moshe until he came to his tent. This is actually said in a negative way. That he was actually praising. What do you mean? It's obvious. They was it says over there, look what Rashi says it. He said Rashi says it. 2 lines at the bottom. Look how fat he is. His thighs are so fat. Look how fat his neck is. In other words, he takes care of himself. He's very indulgent. And Hakam Mishalanu, so the gelt. Really see the chutzpah, how people can talk about Yisrael. Forget about the choshen with the nation's ish. It's just so coarse and crass. Anyway, try to picture it. It's so hard to understand. And what's the shevach? If a chacham walks by, you have to stand up within 4 amos. The kivus of Adam is yeshiv. Once he walks by your 4 amos, when he's 4 amos away from you, you stand up, and you wait till he walks by you another 4 amos, and then you can sit down. As far as you can see. The kivus, when you can see him coming, you stand up, and then once he passes you by 4 amos beyond you, yeshiv. Aber nasi. How do I know that? It says he beat the Achri Moshe ad Boyoela. They did not sit down until Moshe came back, went to his tent. So that's the Shavach. And the Gnai is what we said before.